time for another round of Brandy. Candid conversations over cocktails about all things brand with your hosts, Reilly Newman and Scott Saunders, the brand developers behind Motif Brands.
All right, welcome back to another round of Brandy.
Yes, welcome.
Scott and I are here, and we're talking about something that actually came up from an author that many of you are familiar with because he wrote this great book called The Psychology of Money. It became a bestseller very quickly, and it's written by a guy named Morgan Housel. And he actually has a background in writing for like The Motley Fool and some other financial literature, but also he is a partner with the Collaborative Fund, which they do investments and whatnot. But he said one thing about how our experience in the world really makes up some decimal number of 0.0000001%.
Definitely way lower than 1%.
Way
Point
lower.
is less than 1%. Much
Yet-
less than 1%.
Yet the kicker is that small, teeny bit of a fraction that our experience makes up in the world is actually nearly 100% of our perspective on the world. It creates how we see the world.
Yeah.
So there's definitely that's a problem.
Yeah. And you know, just to highlight, we're basically talking about making brand personal and how we view things. And it's kind of like with how you experience your day to day, right? Makes up your 100% view of the world around you. Right. But the reality is, if you flip it around, your contribution of experience within the whole world and all of its inhabitants is that minor fraction. And that's why it's such a minor thing, but to us, to each individual, that minor contribution of experience is, like Reilly said, makes up pretty much 100% of how we interpret the world to be.
Yeah, so this little factoid really resonated with Scott and I because it really does sum up what we've been talking about, is just the whole experience of your customer and you getting in the shoes of your customer and understanding where they're coming from, their perspective on things, and also just having that empathy as a brand and focusing on those little tiny moments. Because as a business, yes, you're running the day-to-day, you have marketing, you got employees, you got all these things, all these plates spinning, and you might forget or not realize that tiny little moment that your customer happens to interact with you, whether it's on the phone or when they come into your store or they pay, the bill you sent them. Yeah. That creates the majority of their perspective of who you are and what your business is exactly.
In more simple terms, think of it as if your business or brand is a box, you as the business owner are inside the box, right? You are it is your business. So all the behind the curtain, all the inner workings of all the business and the brand are within the box. And that's your view, is inside the box. But your audience, your customer, the people you're trying to reach with your brand, they are on the outside of the box. So they have a different view of your brand than you do. Another simple way of thinking about it is take a cylinder. And if you look at a cylinder from the side, it looks like a rectangle or a square, depending on how tall the cylinder is. But if you look at it from the top, it looks like a circle. It's the same object, same thing, but it's seen from two completely different perspectives.
Yeah, and it's such a great example because you don't even have to convince someone of it, because when you think about a great experience you had with a company or a business, it's usually when the brand really kind of stepped out and saw something from your perspective and addressed a need you had or a need you had upcoming, and they were able to address that perspective that you have as a person, you personally.
And I think that the biggest struggle that a lot of people have with their brand is they're too close to it enough to step outside of it to look at it from a different angle, potentially more importantly, the angle of their audience.
And that is such a big kind of perspective mindset shift of going, okay, I'm no longer the owner or the marketing manager or whoever it could be. Now I'm thinking like the consumer. I'm getting in their shoes. I'm starting to see from their perspective of how they not only see our business and our brand, but how it interacts with them, those personal little experiences and those touch points along the way. Because if you don't, it's going to really skew not only how you look at your business and your customer, but how you address those needs and those services and the desires of your audience, because you're only seeing it from one perspective. So you got to switch it up.
And as Reilly said, it's something we preach all the time, because the crux of brand is experience. Because again, it's that relational aspect, and that's how the relationship is built, just like within two people, like Reilly and myself. We have experiences with each other, and that is how we view our relationship with each other, to each other as friends and cohorts and coworkers and all that stuff, is through our experience of working together. And that comprises my impression of Reilly, and it likewise back at me.
Right. And so when you think of relationship, then the best way to grow a relationship, to get to the root of a relationship, is really thinking about the other person personally, getting and, understanding, so-and-so likes these things, or my friend they enjoy this place to go for dinner, so I'll invite them to go here, or whatever those things. It's getting in their mind and understanding where they're coming from, or understanding, they like to talk about certain things, or they enjoy certain activities. And that kind of brings us to the first point of, okay, if what Morgan Housel brings up, which if you haven't read his book, Psychology of Money, it's awesome. He's very good at these awesome out of the box thoughts, or just inverting an idea and bringing up something that in a very intelligent and like consumable way. But anyways, so going back to, okay, if we need to get personal, does that mean customization? Or does that mean personalization? Or what's the difference exactly?
I know, I think the first thing people come to mind when they think about that is they think of surveys, right? Or customer feedback, right? Or focus groups, right?
When you look at Apple's history, Steve Jobs, he didn't really do focus groups. Same thing like we talked about in the last episode, like Henry Ford. If he would have done a focus group, they would have said, we want faster horses. And he goes, no, you're on this thing called an automobile. You want to travel further and faster and get that done. So the focus group would have been off. But also there's plenty of evidence that when you ask someone for their feedback on something, or their their opinion, their mindset, they actually change. So if I ask someone, hey, did you like that movie, or did you like reading that book or that show, they instantly go into, not their consumer mode, but they go into critic mode.
Yeah.
And they start kind of nitpicking or looking at it from a different lens. And just that subtle shift, that's enough to skew really a lot of the feedback you're getting. That's going to kind of taint what you're going to then implement, rather than you want the consumer opinion. You want to understand that. And the consumer might not know what they're wanting. They might not know what they had issues with or anything like that. But you as a provider, you can get personal with them and try to go, okay, what would serve them better? What would bring more value to them, or help them in different ways? Yeah.
If you were to just blindly ask a customer going, hey, how do you think we could improve? Probably one of the first questions would be, well, make it cheaper, right? I mean, who doesn't want to save money, right? Or give me 50% off, whatever it is, right? So if you ask a open-ended question like, what do you think? Right? You're going to get constructive criticism. Now, maybe it's going to be good. Maybe it's going to be productive, but it's also, that's not necessarily what you might be after. It's like, do you like A or B versus what do you think of this? Well, they're going to always approach it with their opinion of how you could make it better or change it. And that may or may not be what you're looking for.
And that's a good point, because it's like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for critiques? Or are you looking for, just general feedback? They don't know that. And you probably don't know that either if you are just going out and asking, sending out for customer feedback. And most of those things, if you give someone, rate this on, 1 to 5 scale, usually people pick a 3 or a 4 because they want to be nice. And they don't want to be, too extreme on picking a 1 or a 5. So then you're just getting false information anyways. But overall, it just comes down to having that mindset shift. And really even looking at, brands you interact with day to day, or some of your favorite brands, like what are they doing? How do you see how they're responding to the market, and how can you be inspired as a business owner or a marketer?
Take off your business hat, put on your consumer hat. You engage with other brands. So the ones that you feel are more of a personal connection, what are some of, what are they doing? And again, we also talk about not mimicking, right?
Yeah.
Not doing verbatim what other brands are doing, but look at them for inspiration, for possible solutions.
Right.
Here's a classic example that probably within the last 6 months, I needed a motorcycle part. And it's not something it's aftermarket, meaning they don't make it anymore. So you couldn't go to Amazon or the part manufacturer's website to order this part. So I had to go to eBay, right? Because it's an outdated, and I found the part and ordered it, and I got it. But yet there was a personal note inside it, a little thank you card, just a small one. addressed to me. It wasn't generic, right? They handwritten from whoever, whether it was a mom and pop eBay store, I don't know. But they wrote out a nice message, said, thank you for your purchase. And if you have any other needs for your bike, please think of us. And I still remember that. They didn't have to do that at all, but they did. And it kind of made me think like, okay, next time I have to go maybe I'll go to their store first and see if they have the part, because I would want to give them my business. They took that extra time and effort to show me that personally, some gratification. That went a big mile for me.
And there's kind of like two sides to it. Like that to me is like personal in the sense of it's human. There's a human on the other side of the transaction.
Yeah.
And they're showing that, and they're kind of giving you the nod and acknowledging you as a human, not just thanks for buying.
You're not a number. You're not a statistic. You're not a transaction in their balance sheet.
System. Yeah. And I feel like that's a huge point that's easily you can implement and roll that out nicely, and it's a good touch. And then you do have kind of the whole argument of customization versus personalization. And customization is like, that's what you get when you're at the, kiosk, or you're able to customize like your email settings or customize something on your phone.
My pizza order.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you can customize it to your liking. Personalization in today's day is like more kind of like on Netflix, where you have an algorithm that's starting to personalize. Oh, Scott watched this, Reilly enjoyed this movie, he gave it a thumbs up or whatever, and it's starting to personalize the algorithm and actually then give you content that you like. So it's the same thing that, social media is doing to you as well. Not with the best, I guess, motive behind it.
That's a mixed bag. You look at one thing, one website for some random thing, maybe even not for yourself, but for someone else. And next thing you know, your entire social media feed is nothing but similar brands and ads for this one thing. I'm like, I don't really need that. But when we were chatting earlier, Reilly, too, you mentioned like even more on a bigger scale, a way of flipping the script a little bit so the brand is approaching it and showing that they're seeing it from the customer side is like in some retail stores like IKEA or Google even, right?
Yeah, well, I recently in Target, the Google products are all lined up, which they have Nest now and a couple other things like that sit on counters or on a desk. And
in the kitchen, kind of primarily.
Yeah, and that's actually where I've seen a lot of it. And in commercials, I think we're all kind of familiar with that, where you do see in kitchen settings. What was brilliant about it is that Google has this awesome display where there's like a kind of faux countertop and the products are sitting there nice and spaced out. And then they did this, faux backsplash. The tile looked all nice and shiny. And then they did this nice lighting that looks like it's, literally someone's countertop. And I'm like, that alone, showing the product in that context rather than just, on shelves or on like a metal cabinet, it sets the context because it's actually relating to me as the consumer. That's personal. It's understanding where I'm coming from, what most likely I'm looking for, or how I can relate it to my personal life. Yeah. And they're kind of filling in that blank for me. And to me, that's being personal. That's actually, they're stepping out. They didn't have to build that out. Like that costs them
the expense.
More money.
Oh yeah. Well, and because a lot of times, I mean, a lot of the development side, on the business side of things, you work on your product or service. You work on the packaging, everything up to the point of purchase or sale, and that's what the business and brand focuses on, right? But they don't necessarily go one step further, and then what it's like from their side of the fence, right? From how they view the brand and product. So brands that can do that is kind of like what we're talking about. It's like they're able to understand, okay, this is how the customer sees my brand, or they want to be seen, right? Yep. Again, it's the brand's opportunity, it's your business's opportunity to steer and manipulate your brand so that you're allowing you are getting into the shoes of the customer. How would the customer like to see my brand or my product or service?
Yeah. It feels so basic, but it's like, okay, how does the other side see this problem or this certain opportunity? How does the other side see this? And getting in the mind of it. It's like, this is the same solution for like politics. It's like just getting in the mind and going, okay, how would the other side see this? How do they see this? If we're all looking at the same object here, how do they see it? How does my consumer, my customer, my buyer, how do they see, the product I'm trying to sell? Do they see it in the kitchen on the counter, or do they see it, somewhere else? Like putting those pieces together helps, helps the brand really take root.
Again, inside the box or outside of the box.
Right. And the holy grail of this is IKEA. They kind of became famous for it. A lot of people know IKEA for the frustration of putting together the products.
Million parts and no instruction manual. Or something.
It's kind of part of it's a puzzle. But before you buy that, in the stores, their designs, you have to walk through them. It's genius where it's a nice little maze, but they actually create all these different experiences in these living situations where they show all the products on display. You can interact with them. They're on the wall. Everything in there you can buy. You can just put, see the tag. Oh, I'm going to pick that up at the end or pick that up now. And that's similar to that Google example where you're actually seeing it in a personal setting like that, in a personal kitchen or a living room or something like that, where they're actually relating it to the customer rather than, like you said, there is usually this barrier between the consumer and the business coming from the other side of the transaction, where you're kind of, okay, how am I going to apply that to my life? And you're trying to personalize it, but you can't. You're trying to fit it into your life rather than the brand coming to you and going, hey, you can use this in X, Y, or Z. I've
seen that in other stores too, like mattress stores. They're all like in a grid, kind of a maze of just mattresses and box springs sitting on the bed frames and stuff, as opposed to where they create little spaces and it actually looks like little different bedroom settings with nightstand lamps and even some wall hanging to make it look and feel like a bedroom, where they're showing off the mattress and the size and everything like that.
Right.
And
showroom.
I guess it is. We're talking about showrooms, but not every business or brand has to do that. And again, these are just we're not trying to write a specific recipe. These are just suggestions to give you context so that when we're talking about big, high elevation concepts, you're able to grasp them.
Yeah, and you see this in advertising all the time where they might show, the cup of coffee they're trying to sell or whatever it could be in a certain setting, right? Or someone enjoying the product in a certain setting, or just kind of trying to paint the picture a little. And to me, it's a sense of getting personal. It's that trying to go, not predictive, not trying to predict a certain situation, but trying to suggest and give that full picture of, hey, this is how you enjoy it. This is how you do that. Because you're getting in the mind of your buyer and trying to provide that.
Yeah. To circle back around, the top is that if you have one customer out of 1,000, right? That's 1/1000th of their experience. For you as a brand, right? It's a micro experience. But for them, that is 100% of their experience and impression and perception of your brand.
Yeah.
So that's why don't ignore that.
Yeah, and being in business, like you can get stuck in the business, in the day-to-day, working in the business and not working on your business. And I'm sure plenty of people listening have read E-Myth and they're familiar with that term of not working in your business, but working on it. And sometimes you do need third-party perspective, just because your consumers are a third party. They're coming from, a different walk of life or, from a different angle than you are, because you're stuck inside the box, like Scott said, and you view your business totally different than them. And so getting some outside input from someone who is familiar with brand or marketing, that can always help. But also it comes down to you as the owner or the marketing to actually step out and look at it and try to get in the shoes of the buyer. Because it's like, you're not going to be able to do that without understanding that. And that's, again, if you listen to other episodes, we've talked about everything from Walt Disney to other great brands that have done that successfully go, how you do anything is how you do everything. Because those tiny little anythings make everything.
Yeah, they add up.
For the buyers.
They do add up.
And, even when we talked about before is, like Scott said, the customer experience of that being, that's really, there's a lot of rubber that hits the road in those interactions. So making sure those are on point and going, okay, how do we address this? How do we actually interact with the customers if there is an issue or if this pops up or whatever it could be, trying to walk through those things and have that mindset and those systems to actually be able to address certain things. And that goes to the same thing of kind of like design thinking. And that's, again, very popular in the business community of what IDEO made very popular with design thinking and thinking with design in mind, how you design your store layout, how you design the interactions, the systems, and having all those tiny little interactions and touch points really be thought out. It's just being deliberate.
I think the other, again, it falls back like, because brand is relational. I always love thinking about brand as a person. A brand has a personality, has a voice, And there's certain people that I think you run across in life that they have an impression of themselves that may be different from everyone else's impression of them. If they're a rude person, but they don't know that, right? Or they, they're a little conceited. You look at we all have some negative behavioral attributes. We do. But I'm sorry, what?
Are you trying to tell me something?
No. I've been meaning to just find the right opportunity to tell you about this, Reilly. No. But I think it's kind of like when when you run across someone that is self-aware.
Yeah.
And I think that probably is life experience, and as you get wiser as you get older. But being self-aware means I know I'm aware of my faults. I'm aware of the stuff that drives my wife crazy, that drives even friends. Like they may have an impression of me, but if they were to give me like a self-improvement list, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that about yourself and trying to strive to improve that's a self-aware person. So as a brand and as a business, find ways that you can be self-aware. If there was a brand therapist, you go to the brand therapist to get an understanding of why your brand does what it does, why your business does what it does. There's times when we, engage with a new potential client and first thing we do is we'll look at the brand from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
Without any knowledge of the brand and the business. And then when we start talking with the owner and we find, this, and this, it's easy for us as brand developers to go, well, there's a gap here. There's a misconnection because you do these things. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So that should be a red flag when someone's coming with a fresh set of eyes on your brand. So like that's a big thing.
It reminds me of like when you have like a loved one, hopefully a loved one, they say something like, hey, like your posture, or like you always say this word or something. Where they kind of give you like a notice, and then you're kind of like, oh my God, I had no idea.
I had no idea I did that.
I am hunching or whatever.
Right.
Like,
right.
And then you're that much more aware. And so it's like the brand's the same thing where you have to first kind of accept that, yes, you probably do have some blinders on regarding your business. You probably are unaware of some things that maybe employees are doing when you're not looking, or they might be cutting corners or wherever it could be. It's like the understanding that you don't know what you don't know. And being mature enough to accept that and then go, I do want to correct this. Like Scott did, like therapy, going, okay, I'm going to look at this objectively and I'm going to address these things, these faults, and compensate for them, or maybe, work out in this area to help them. But also then applying that and going, okay, now how on the personal level with all these experiences that are making up the true experience of my brand, how can I help them be more consistent? How can I help these personal experiences? They will vary, but I need them to be within a certain lane that my brand is needing to grow in. I'm trying to have my brand, mean this.
Yeah. And
these personal experiences are those things that are going to add up to create that. And so, like Scott said, being self-aware and going, okay, we dropped the ball on this, or we did this, and what do we do in those situations? Or, yes, this is the brand that we're building towards. I need these personal experiences to really kind of all have this more consistent as they kind of line up in that lane that we're aiming for. And it's not going to be perfect, and it's not cut and dry. Because again, brand is gray area. You're dealing with perceptions and subjectivity, and again, personal experiences, but all the more that to me is a good thing, because all the more you have that potential to kind of influence and to help and to get in there and do some work.
Yeah, and brand is always evolving because it's relational, because it's experiential. It's always evolving, and so it's something that these type of wellness checks, reality checks, self-aware itineraries of like taking a pulse on your brand and your business, right? Yeah. You may come away from this podcast going, oh, I'm totally inspired. I want to do this. I want to look and find ways I can, tighten down screws and things like that to make my brand and my business better. But then it's not a one and done. It's almost like a continual process. It's something that you have to do all the time. I can't take a personal inventory of myself and my strengths and weaknesses, 5 years ago and call it a day. It's something that I'm constantly trying to check in with myself and going, hey, those weak spots. Have I been working on those? Have I been trying to break myself of this bad behavioral habit?
And that actually reminds me, it's like when we work with clients and we're going through the brand strategy and really looking at their overall, like, hey, what's the current climate of the brand? It's always amazing to me how many times the current brand and the business, they're either discounting something that they're providing that's a value, or they're completely just kind of sweeping under the rug something of their process, or maybe the materials they use or the ingredients or whatever it could be that actually matters to the person they're selling to.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, okay, well, why aren't you emphasizing this or drawing more attention to it?
Yeah.
And they'll be like, oh, either they didn't think about it, or to them that's just part of, that's just the way we do it. And so to them it's standard and status quo, yet to the buyer, from my perspective, it's like, no, that's actually what they're going for. So then we pull that more to the front, or highlight it more, or bring it more into like the strategy of emphasizing those certain things, and it benefits the brand because that's actually what the consumer's wanting. But from the inside of the box, perspective, they weren't seeing that.
Yeah. Here's another recent example that just popped into my head just now is that, Adobe, which makes the world leading industry software for our line of work, just raised their prices. They announced on Friday, their prices are going up for their Adobe suite with Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, all those, almost doubling. And their justification is, well, we keep adding these new generative features, these new AI type of generative features and stuff that, to be honest with you, as a professional, I don't want to use those. I don't use those, and I'd rather not have those features in the software. But yet they're appealing to kind of the unprofessional, the person that isn't necessarily a designer or photographer, whatever. And so those tools have value, but I feel like right now Adobe's move as in their business model is ignoring a whole bunch of professionals out in the industry who, are not happy with this announcement, are not happy with where they're taking things. And these are the very tools by which we can do our day-to-day jobs. Like, at least give us tiers. So possibly you have, hey, here's our price, right? But we're going to do another tier that's more for the people that don't want all those AI generative text to draw. I mean, where literally I type in a text prompt and the AI is going to draw a logo or brand,
As a user and shareholder, I think they should have rolled out a separate tier that had the AI integrated and still kept that. That would have been way better to just kind of, test the interest. But instead of, to me, they're trying to copy what Amazon does, where Amazon increases, they add in a bunch of stuff in their Prime membership, boom, 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 and then they finally increase the price, but not by the percentage that Adobe did. So I think it was a bit of a Hail Mary. And
I think it's more, again, had they stepped into the shoes of the consumer rather than they stayed in the box, I think, when they made the description. And I don't know that they have the best pulse on all of their users and going, okay, we're going to step inside the consumer and we're going to present, we have to raise our prices, whatever, but we're going to we're not just forcing everybody to one solution and everyone's got to fork over a heck of a lot more money every month for their monthly subscription. Now we're going to do, we're recognizing we have maybe more two segments of our audience. Again, they're stepping outside the box, seeing it from our angle and recognizing that. And I think that would be a better brand move for them.
Yeah, it's a weird grab to try to, I feel like it's just trying to get the Canva users, which if you're a professional designer and legit, you don't want to be associated with like Canva. It's such a mediocre platform and just doesn't work, and just it's a different beast. But I know there's users who do enjoy that, who don't have professional backgrounds. So it's a totally different audience. And it's just odd for Adobe, which is an industry leader, to then try to start catering to that.
And we always talk, here's the flip side. We are in other podcasts and stuff, we've also talked about, as a brand, looking for opportunities, right, in your market space where there's a gap that your brand can fill. That's being distinctive, that's being unique, and that's making your brand stand out. So when other brands are blind to what they're doing, they can almost set up opportunities for competitors to come in and steal business from them.
Yeah. And like you said, that little gap in the market, typically that's solved through kind of hyper personalization. It's that zooming in and going, okay, what does this specific consumer care about, and how do I tailor everything I do for that one thing?
Yeah.
And that's where you get huge success stories where, it might be an app or something where the app does one thing, but it does it really darn well because they were focused on one issue for one set of, consumers, and they just hit a home run. And that's, like Scott said, as these things kind of get bloated, they create those gaps. And then someone come in with the personalization and really save the day.
Yeah. Because, and going back to your example of Amazon, used to be Amazon Prime members, you'd have guaranteed free shipping 2 days, right? And that was the big incentive for having a Prime membership, right? And you pay that because you're like, well, gee, if you do the math, I'm like, I'm saving in free shipping, and it's 2 day, right? Like super quick. And then now it's not so much. Their market share, they're working with a lot of other independent suppliers who are not necessarily, it's not 1 or 2 days. You're still getting free shipping, but sometimes it's 4 or 5 days. But, guess what? You got Prime Video. And that's where they're justifying, because they're creating all this new content for Prime Video and the streaming service, entertainment service, which is bundled. But maybe if they keep jacking up the prices, Amazon might want to consider actually having 2 tiers. One that's just Amazon Prime Basic. But if you want Prime Video and you want to be then paying over the years as they increase the price because of all the original content they're producing for Prime Video and all those things, that would be a smart move, because they're recognizing, again, they're stepping out of the box, recognizing the consumer, seeing it from their side of things, and pivoting or making business choices or decisions that benefit the consumer. Because that's their experience of it. And it's different from your experience as the business owner.
Yeah. And it's also, to be personal and personalizing, don't just think that means putting someone's name on something or
variable data.
Or variable data input. It's like, no, like you can put a little more effort than that. Like, think a little, longer about it. Get some input from people who think about brand experience and they think about strategy, and really look at your business through that lens, because that's going to help you zoom out, so then you can zoom in and really capture who you're trying to really bring value to. And
like a classic example is if you have a retail store and you step outside of your business and your retail and realize, wow, we've got a lot of our customers that come in are dog owners. Well, guess what? Maybe making your store dog friendly, maybe having snacks or treats, maybe a water ball, whatever it is, right? You're recognizing that and leaning on that, capitalizing on it, because that can further strengthen the 100% experience that the consumer's having with your brand.
Yeah. And your customers may not go, and they applaud you and as you do this, they're not going to, raise you up and dance you around the room and everything. It's like, no, they probably won't even notice. They really probably won't. But subconsciously, where it matters, they're going to take note of that and be like, we went to this cool place and they, had a little stuff for Spot to drink water, and they had dog treats or whatever.
People still name their dog Spot.
Spot. But it is, so it's not that these things are, again, they're not, sometimes it's glamorous, sometimes it's not. And you as an owner, it's these little things that just add up. They matter, because it's those tiny little experiences that then for you, it may look tiny. It may look like nothing. Putting a dog dish out, it looks like nothing. But for the consumer, it is making that full experience, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah. So hopefully you've got kind of the gist of what Reilly and I have been talking about in this episode, of just how do you step outside and be self-aware as a business to understand your brand, not from your perspective, but from the perspective of those that are engaging with your brand.
Right. No matter how small the interaction is, it matters.
It does.
Until next time, thank you for listening, and we will catch you on another round of Brandy.
Cheers.